Welcome to the Mythic Life podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Eric Brumett, and I'm so excited for today because a good, dear friend of mine is here joining us. My good friend, Craig Koekemoer. He is the event host coordinator for ThetaHealing in Russia and has been holding a beautiful space for learning and growing and healing and transformation for so many people, and really holds this place of being of life of service and supporting so many and getting out there with their practices and being an incredible mentor. And I'm so excited to have you on here today, Craig. Thank you so much for joining me.
Eric, I'm so happy to be on the podcast with you, man. It's been such a long time since we've connected in person. So getting here on Zoom is an awesome experience.
Absolutely. I remember the last time I got to see you was, I think it was even before Vienna opened her new center and she was renting space in Montana.
Correct.
Um, we got to be in a class and do a wonderful exchange there. And I got to
Correct.
really receive your work and support. And, I was just reading through your bio on your site and getting more of your story. And man, I feel such a kinship with you. We have so many things that have either gotten us close to crossing paths or have similarities. And I just really want to hold that space and get to know and share your story here. You grew up in South Africa. Tell me, what was it like, the culture there and coming through that time period, and you know,
So,
share with us, please.
so part of my history goes back to my dad, and my dad was 49 years my senior, so he was like really old. Um, he retired out of the Air Force as a general in 1985, and he fought in the Second World War. So he was a fighter pilot in the Second World War.
Wow.
And he was also very much involved in the Air Force up in Angola. There was a proxy war between America and the Soviet Union at that stage, and South Africa was backing the Yanks, and Angola was backing the Ruskies or the Soviets. And of course, South Africa was sending their troops in, and my dad was also involved in flying C-130 Hercules transport planes and a whole bunch of other things. And he also flew in Korea, so he was also fighting against the Chinese communist setup that was happening in North Korea. So when I grew up in the 80s, I grew up in a place called Pretoria.
Mm,
And Pretoria was a very cold in the winter, hot in the summer, huge big thunderstorms, hail coming down,
mm,
smashing, everything in sight. But I had a fantastic childhood. I grew up in Pretoria until about the age of 13. Then I moved down to George. And I remember growing up in that era, and we still had, at that stage, we still had apartheid going through. So there was this separation between black and white. We had beaches for whites only, and beaches for non-whites. And non-whites included another, as they have it in South Africa, racial classification called coloreds. Now, I think the American term for colored is a black person, but that's not the way that South Africa had it. It's a person who is from Malaysian and a mixture of black and white genes. So they've got a lot of them are Muslim, and it's there's three separate classifications. So whites had one beach and non-whites had another beach. But of course, the non-whites beach was like the rocky patches, not the sandy beaches.
mm,
And we grew up in an era where, I grew up, my dad had a huge respect for people from all religions and all races and stuff like that. I mean, he spoke Xhosa, and he went through a very difficult patch, because I remember him saying to me one day, son, as an officer in the South African Air Force, we were told that if you shake the hand of a black man, you're going to get a court martial. That's how bad it was at those times. But
wow.
I spent a lot of time traveling between my mom and my dad, because they got divorced when I was fairly young. And my mom moved up to a place in Zimbabwe, a farm, which was about 7 hours drive from Pretoria. And I used to go up school holidays, I used to go up to the farm, and my mom would give me a .22 rifle, and she'd say, okay, there you go, keep yourself busy for the day. And then I'd either go out into the bush and go track animals, or go and sit on top of a dam wall and look down. And it was one of these cement round dams which rises up out of the ground, and you'd sit up on the top, and then you'd look down at the animals, and the wild pigs would come and drink, and the baboons would come down, and the impala, and a lot of the other deer. So Zimbabwe was a very formative experience for me, because it taught me a lot of skills. It taught me a lot of observation skills and stuff like that. And when I'd go back to school, I'd be sharing some of those things with kids, but they really wouldn't understand it, because not a lot of them had the opportunity to go up into the bush like I did. So I
Yeah.
had this wonderful mixture of going to school, but also being out in the bush. And in our primary school days, like from the age of about 5, 6, from about 6 or 7 up to about 13, that's what we used to call primary school. So that's the first 7 years of your school career. I remember in the school that I lived in, we grew up with the threat of uh, bomb attacks by what they call terrorists, and that was the African National Congress, the ANC, and they had a military wing called Umkhonto Sizwe, and they used to go into various areas and plant bombs and then detonate them. And I remember one of the bombs went off in the Air Force headquarters. But all the way throughout my childhood, I was accustomed to, okay, so if there's a bomb alert, you open up all the windows, you evacuate safely, because if the bomb does go off in a classroom or something like that, shattering glass is going to hurt people. And then if it's a smoke alarm or a fire alarm, then you close all the windows. So we grew up in this kind of an environment where we were very much taught how to look after ourselves, how to react to certain situations. And it was a bit stressful, I will say.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting in the fact that I got the opportunity to go both in the city, but also out into the bush, and I could connect with animals. And I, up to this day, I still have a fantastic connection with animals. I mean,
Mm.
I can tell you stories that will pull the hairs on the back of your neck right up, and it's fantastic things that I've experienced. But
Yeah.
I moved down to a place called George when I was about 13, and I went down with my dad. My dad had retired at that stage. And then I did my high school career, which was the last 5 years of school. I did that down in George, and that's where I learned how to boogie board. And I tried surfing, but come on, man, surfing is a skill that you struggle to learn it. If you don't do it on a long board, and you start off on a short board, you really, really struggle. So I just did the boogie boarding thing, but it was fantastic times. I had two families. I had my dad and my stepmom on the one side, and my mom and my stepdad on the other side. And it was great, because I'd get 2 sets of Christmas presents, 2 sets of birthday presents. So you learned how to travel between one and the other, and you get to go out on your own. So I'd go up on the train or the plane or whatever, and it was a fantastic learning experience for me. And that also goes into where my journey into ThetaHealing comes in, because I was at the age of 30, at the age of 11, I started with Sunday school teaching. I did my little course, and then I would teach 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds the stories of the Bible. So I would be every Sunday in the Sunday school, and I'd be the big Sunday school teacher, even though I was a little kid. And that was my introduction into the teaching realm, and I've done that ever since. Even throughout my 20s and my 30s, no matter which field I went to, I always ended up teaching people about certain things, be it computers, be it personal safety, be it security, whatever. I had a really interesting upbringing, and I also saw the change from the apartheid regime to now the Rainbow Nation, when Nelson Mandela came into power, 1994. And it was a fantastic period to be in South Africa. And then I left at the end of the 1990s, and I went out to London. So, yeah, I tell you, South Africa was a fantastic place, so much opportunity, so many different experiences. I remember when I was in my 20s, I ran an amateur football club, and I had one team of older guys, like 20, 21, all the way through to about 28. And then I had a second team, which was just young kids from the township. And I used to drive in to go and pick them up for practice and bring them back out again. And then we'd practice. And then at the end of practice, I'd take them back in. And it was fantastic, because I had this ability to connect with the kids and to work with people from different backgrounds, who spoke different languages, who had different viewpoints. And it was very, very interesting for me because it gave me satisfaction. It gave me a fantastic grounding into what I've gotten into up to this point today.
Wow. What an upbringing. And, having that reprieve of connecting into nature really must be such a huge key to rejuvenating for you. I know it is for me. It's like when we're in this place of service, when we're in this place of teaching and holding the space and working with people in their distresses, like to return to that place of homeostasis and balance, is such a big key, of being of service.
I'll tell you, nature is a fantastic, fantastic healer.
Yeah. Yeah. And it keeps you keen. It must have really had to navigate some situations because a 22 rifle is not going to take out many of those animals.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the sound would scare away a lot of the animals.
That's true.
But I mean, I've been chased by hippos.
Oh,
I've nearly been stood on by an elephant. I've had a captive cheetah when I was about 11 or 12. I had a captive cheetah lie across my lap, and like a putty tat. When a putty tat goes purr, we'll take a cheetah, magnify that by about 10 times, and it's not just purr; it's just your whole body's shaking. Yeah, I've had some fantastic experiences, but I've also learned the value of respecting nature. Respecting animals. It's the animal kingdom. Respecting what they like, what they don't like, and being able to interact with them. And it's helped me even up to, I went into Eilat. There's a dolphin sanctuary out there, and I went scuba diving in the sanctuary, and I went down onto the bottom, put down on my knees, and a dolphin came up to me, and he came right up, touched his nose up to my nose, looked me in the eyes, and then swam away. And the instructor's like sitting there going, "Dude, do you just realize what happened? I've never seen that in my life before." I was like, "Yeah, I know, dude. I've got a special connection with animals, man. I speak their language sometimes, So
yeah,
all of those lessons that I've learned, I tell you, it's really, really helped me in terms of working with myself, working with people, and understanding how nature heals and understanding the bigger picture, if you want to put it that way.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, how old were you when you moved to England? What inspired that big move?
So, um, I have, if you have the Rugby World Cup or the Cricket World Cup or the Soccer World Cup, I can shout for 7 different countries because my ancestry comes through. If I follow my ancestral lineage, it comes through from 7 different countries. And my grandmother was born up in Scotland. And when I was about 26, I had a friend of mine who said, "Oh yeah, let's go to England or the UK and let's go to France." And I was like, that's not a bad idea. And then I did some research and I found out that I needed to be in the UK before I was 27. And then I could get what would be called an ancestry visa. And that's exactly what I did. So at the end of 2020, on the 4th of January 2004, I arrived in the UK and I stayed there for the next 13 years. So I stayed there all the way through until the end of 2012. Yeah, all the way through until the end of 2012. And it was South Africa was changing. And I thought to myself, well, I've got this opportunity to go and live and work in the UK. I built up a lot of skill because in my 20s, I went and did my military service. So I spent a year in the Air Force. And then I decided to get stuck into computers. So I went and got stuck into computers and I worked as a contractor for the whole of the 1990s in South Africa. And I mean, I worked for some of the big banks. I worked for the government. I worked for South African Customs and Excise and the Internal Revenue System. I worked for the South African Reserve Bank. So I worked for some pretty big players. And then I thought, you know what? I've got an opportunity here. Why not? Before I'm 27, let me get into the UK. Let me go and see what it's like. And then I moved out to London. And for the first 2 or 3 years, dude, it was fantastic. I was making copious amounts of money. But obviously, as a young man, you don't really understand how to save your money. And what you should or should not be spending it on. And then the dot-com bubble burst around about 2002, 2003. And they went,
Oh yeah.
if you don't have a university degree, we're not even going to consider your CV. Now, everything that I'd learned in the computer industry, I'd learned myself. I'd done a 3-month programming course in Johannesburg in the 1990s. And then I taught myself everything else. And I had a very wide background or a very wide range of skills. And that's what I used to work for in the UK for the first 3 years. And then when the dot-com bubble burst, man, I sent out must be about 700 applications or 700 CVs. And I think I got called in for maybe 4 interviews. And I was like, okay, whew, gee, okay, what do I do now? And having done my military service, having come out of a family that was military, I was the last of my generation to actually serve or to complete compulsory military service in South Africa. I thought, well, you know what? I can go into security. Why not? So I called up this company. I saw there was an advert for bouncers. And I called up this company and I said to them, okay, guys, I'm from South Africa. I'd love to come and do the job. They said, yeah, okay, cool. Come down and do the interview. And I found out where the location was. And I got into this office and I walked in. And I looked at the first guy, and the first guy was like about half a head taller than me. Then I looked at the second guy, he was like 2 heads taller than me. I looked at the third guy, 2.5 heads. And then the fourth guy who was sitting behind the desk, he was like about 4 heads taller than me. I'm like, geez, am I in the right place here? This is like, I'm small, man, compared to these guys. These guys are huge. So I had 2 of the guys shuffled out, and they were like, okay, come on, come in, come sit down. And I shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And I went and sat down. And yeah, I think, a lot of people think that it requires a lot of muscle to be in security, but it also requires a bit of common sense and a bit of intelligence, because you don't always have to get physical in that environment. So most of the work that I did, I talked people down. And that was my introduction to security. So from about 2003 until about the end of 2012, I worked security full time, eventually becoming, I owned my own training company. I was also the general manager for the company, and I was working all areas of security. So I'd like work in the bars and the pubs and the clubs. I'd work in the sporting grounds. I'd do VIP protection. I'd do residential protection. I'd do shopping centers and anti-theft and, CCTV. And man, I did the whole thing. So I was not only the general manager, but I was also working on the front line. So I had a fantastic learning curve. And it taught me so much about the human way of doing things. You'd stand there and you'd observe the patterns. You go, yeah, okay, that guy's going to be trouble. And as true as anything, he becomes trouble at the end of the night because he can't handle his liquor. Or you'd look and you go, oh, okay, there's 2 or 3 girls. They on the prowl this evening. They're looking to take somebody home. And by the end of the evening, 2 of them have gone home, but the other third one hasn't scored, So it taught me so much about how people behave, and also how things like alcohol impact the way that they behave, and also drugs. So I had such a huge learning experience working security. And that's where I met Natasha, my wife. I was doing the London Olympics in 2012. And I met her just before the Olympics. And then after the Olympics, I think it was about 6 or 7 months after the Olympics, that's when I decided to leave security and leave London. But wow, man, sure, London, it changed so much from when I got there in the beginning of 2000 to when I left in 2012. Wow, what a change. Huge.
Going through all these different, chapters of the sense of profession and career, and it's amazing how useful it is as a healer. Like
big time.
I did martial arts and worked with in the US called First Alarm Security, was a security officer, watching over businesses and stuff like that. And then also was doing a lot of restaurant work. And I have to say, what honed my intuition of reading people was this process of observation.
Yes.
To really be able to watch behavior, to, as you approach a table when you're a waiter and you're watching the dynamics, the social interactions between people, you can kind of start to hear their thoughts of where their interests were and were not. Um, to insecurity, as you're saying, watching the people of going, oh, this person, doesn't know how to carry themselves and might end up being, a drunk problem at the end of the night, or, oh, that person looks like they may, you know, be consuming something other than just alcohol and might be into some drug use and what that means. And, watching all these different behaviors, like it's really interesting when we come to this place of being mentors. It's something I was actually just writing about the other day, of how you don't actually stop and end things in your life transitioning to something new. Everything gets brought forward,
Oh,
like
of course.
when you step into this place of like hosting events and running courses and bringing your teaching ability with your experience and then mentoring people, like what would you speak to people that know that they feel that calling to wanting to be a healer, but are in a corporate job? Like, how do they transition? Like, what how do you best support people that are wanting to start out and start a new chapter in their life?
You take the step. You take the step. You'll see that certain things that have happened in your life before that point will help you. To give you an example, when I was 20, I was very involved with the church in South Africa. And whilst I was doing my military service, I went and trained to do telephone counseling. And it was it's a organization that still runs today, and they call Telefriend, and they're based out in Pretoria. And the idea was we would do 6 weeks of every Tuesday and Thursday night. We would go and we would create a picture of our lives, and you'd take cutouts from a magazine and put it on there, and then you'd use that to start the healing process. So you would go through certain traumatic experiences or certain things that trigger you, or things that you need to heal before you can speak to people. And for that 6 week period, all that we would be being trained to do is to be able to listen and to relate to other people. And I remember at the age of 21 having to handle a person on the line who was wanting to commit suicide. You get a phone call and you're sitting there and you know that if you say the wrong thing, that person's going to try and do something stupid, like end their life. And to me, it is stupid, because your life is worth much, much more than ending it just for some reason, because a boyfriend dumped you, or because you lost your job or something like that. You can persevere through those things, and those skills that you learn in other areas. You might be sitting in a corporate job. The decision has to be that you've got to make that choice. Is your job dictating your lifestyle, or do you want your lifestyle to dictate your job? And that is where I sat in 2012. Because Eric, I was working 9 to 6 Monday to Thursday. On a Friday, I would work from 12 o'clock in the morning until 5 in the office. So those were office days. But then on a Friday afternoon, from 5 o'clock until 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning, I'd either be out visiting the sites, or I would be working with the guys. Then I'd go home and sleep. And depending on what we have on the Saturday, I'd either start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or I'd go back out at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd work again until 2, 3 o'clock on the Sunday morning. And then I'd basically have the Sunday off. But then there were some days that we had special events on, and you'd be working 4, 5, 6 days in a row or something. Yeah. And I must have been working anything from about 60 to about 80 hours a week, just doing security work. So some of the stuff would be in the office, and some of the stuff would be on the sites, actually working with people and working with your teams, and all of that stuff together. My job was dictating my lifestyle. I had a security job, so this is what I had to do. And when I met Natasha, and this is a funny story, but when I met Natasha, she's like, oh, yeah, you need to have a look at ThetaHealing. I'm like, yeah, okay, ThetaHealing for sure. Okay, whatever. And I was just being polite. But eventually, when I got into ThetaHealing, I realized that all of the years of experience, from the youth work that I'd done when I was a kid, to the missionary work that I'd done in Mozambique, to the football club, to the counseling services, to teaching people how to use computers, to teaching people self-defense or personal safety, conflict management, that kind of stuff. All of that stuff together assisted me to the point where 2013, when I first got into ThetaHealing, I saw this new direction where I could carry on in a better way, but having my lifestyle dictate my job, if you understand what I mean. And for somebody who's in a corporate environment, often it's very difficult because you don't see other options. You don't see how you're going to get out of, maybe you've got a bit of debt because you studied, or maybe you've entered in too much credit card debt, or you've got a loan on your house or a loan on your car or something like that. You don't see ways that you can move forward. So when you shift your focus, it changes your life, and man, it becomes beautiful. It becomes awesome.
Yeah. And so often when we ignore that calling, life gets more critical to push us to take those steps. Yeah. Even though it takes courage to take those little steps, it's a lot easier than life's crises that can manifest.
When it's your time, it's your time. I remember in 2012 when I met Natasha. Now, of course, my dad was ex-military or ex-Air Force. And, it was beaten into them that don't talk to the communists, don't fraternize with the communists. The Soviets are bad news. Anybody who has a communist party background, they bad news. And when I met Natasha, well, Natasha's from Russia. And I thought to myself, my dad would be turning around in his grave knowing that I'm dating a Russian girl. But when I met Natasha, and I remember one of the first dates that we went on, I was always taught that you open up, you're friendly, you're polite, you respect the woman, you get to know each other. And I took her on this date in a park in central London. And it was funny because I was talking to her and I'm telling her about my life story, and she's like, ooh. And I'm like, wow, okay, so she must really like what I'm saying. Okay, well, I'll just carry on talking. But I didn't think about it, so I just carried on talking. And the hour passed and came hour and a half and 2 hours and whatnot. And about a year later, Natasha turned around to me and she said, you remember that day that we went into the park? And I'm like, yes. And she says, can you remember what you told me? I'm like, why? She says, well, when we met, I didn't speak good English. I mean, she was in London to learn English. Okay. And all that she did was be polite and say, yes, yes, because she couldn't say anything else. And I didn't realize this. And she didn't understand a lot of the stuff that I told her. But it sounded so nice to her that she carried on, yes. And it was just that energetic connection between the two of us that got us together. It's crazy how it works because, she said to me, yes, I do ThetaHealing. And I'm like, ThetaHealing. Okay, cool. And of course, towards the end of 2012, Natasha said to me, well, look, why don't we go on a holiday together? And I'd be having some issues with my bosses and stuff like that. And I'd like, yeah, okay. So I said to the boys, listen, I'm going on a bit of a holiday. When I come back, you guys need to decide. And I remember sitting in a hotel room. We'd gone out to South Africa, and then we'd gone up to Russia. So I went to go and introduce her to my family. And then we also went back to Russia to have her introduce me to her family. But, very conservative. She didn't want to really introduce me to her family straight away. And I'm sitting in a hotel room and I take a message or an email message from my mom. And she says, I don't know how to say this to you, but I need to tell you this. I've got emphysema. I've been diagnosed with emphysema. And I tell you what, my world shattered. You know, here's my mom, who is such an important part in my life, telling me that she's got this fatal chronic disease. And that was it. You know, I called my bosses up and I said, guys, you know, I said to you 3 months ago, I said, listen, you need to sort out the stuff. If you don't sort out the stuff, I'm leaving. Well, now I'm just calling you to tell you I'm leaving. I'm not coming back to London to do no more security stuff. I'm going. My mom needs me, and that's what I'm going to do. And that was the Kickstarter. That was the, you know, you were saying about how the universe pushes you into a certain direction. That was the Kickstarter for me to get into theta healing, because I was like, at that stage in November of 2012, I was still not 100% sure. And I needed to kind of like get my head around what this meant. And then we went off to Thailand, and we were in Thailand, and Natasha, very, very sneakily, you know, very, very cheeky move. She says, you know, there's this instructor in Koh Phangan who is teaching theta healing. Should we go? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Why not? Let's go. So we went off to Koh Phangan, and I then went and did my basic and my advanced practitioners with Martin, fantastic French guy who teaches out in Thailand.
Oh, yes.
And that was my introduction to theta healing. And I tell you what, wow, it opened up my eyes to the possibilities. And I was blown away. And that was also where my job dictating my lifestyle changed around to where my lifestyle dictated my job. Natasha loves to travel. I love to travel. That's been what we've been able to do through getting so involved with theta healing. You know, we've gone to numerous places around the world and run courses and seen people and taken courses and met with friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I did my basic and my advanced practitioners in Thailand with Martin. And Martin's a very analytical kind of guy. You know, he's very much into why things work. And that's me, you know, with my computer background and stuff like that. I like to analyze things. I like to know why things work. And that was my introduction into theta healing. And I just decided, well, you know, okay, so I'm doing the practitioner's class now. Vienna's running the instructor's class in India in February. So I finished in January, and about 3-4 weeks later, I flew across to India, and I went and did my instructor's class. And that's where I met Vienna and Guy for the first time. And I tell you what, it's something I'll never, ever, ever forget. I don't know if you remember, they had a certain set of terrorist attacks in Mumbai. And at the time, Guy was very alert and stuff like that. Now, me with my security background, you know, I know what a gunshot sounds like. And of course, I'm standing in the back of the class and I'm observing the whole thing. And this is me, security boy, standing in the back of the class, you know, listening to the class, doing the class, but also observing things. And we hear this blank. And I could see Guy sit up. And immediately he walks up to the window and he looks out of the window and he's looking down at the street. And so I thought, okay, I know what's going on here. So I gave it a bit of time. And then when we had a bit of a break, I walked up to him and I said to him, so you thought that was a gunshot, right? He's like, yeah. How did you know? I'm like, yeah, no, I think there was a bird that smacked up into the window. You know, it must have been a dove that smacked up into the window. He's like, okay. And you could see him starting to relax again. And that was my introduction into Vienna. But man, I tell you, it's just everything happens for a reason, you know, and it was a fantastic start.
Oh, it is really beautiful in the way of timing when things open up correctly and having that transition into these beautiful values, you know, of prioritizing you know, life over just career, and how they actually support each other, and really open up that space to be there and to give support to your mom, and bring those healing skills in. You know, I know you recently lost your mom, and you know, my condolences, of course.
Thank you.
That this beautiful journey that you got to really help her a lot in staying healthy and prolonging her life. And um, we always have these places in our life that can be very personable and call our need. And I know what led me into theta healing was having a health crisis, and I've worked with so many that it was family needs that kind of sparked that need as well, and interest. Um, and then to go from that to now hosting Vienna so many times and being that coordinator for her seminars, and having to navigate with everything that does become a challenge with travel these days, all this post-pandemic, pardon my language, crap.
100%.
Really, it must be a lot to navigate that, of hosting virtual events and having that transition. And this is the thing, this is what I was referencing before. It's like knowing how to work with computers. Like, obviously that becomes such a big thing these days, right? Like, it's not like all of a sudden that's literally retired and put on the shelf and no longer useful as a tool. Like, as we have life experiences, we gain skills, and skills are always useful. It's a tool. It's not like you retire it. And this journey of our life, this is why working with the subconscious is so important, because subconscious will always yell at us to not take that courageous step. And sometimes people really need that nurturing to help push them out the door to embrace that bigger calling. I hear you with your story of how um, you've worked with these different youth groups, and with teaching, and with holding that place of service of this support telephone service, like, and that side of your spiritual side has always been there, but it's like speckled in with all these other things that were so important for you to learn. Like, we have these journeys of our life, and I think that's so important for people to realize, that no matter what age we're at, um, starting something new doesn't mean that you're going backwards or starting over again.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
The biggest challenge for people is understanding why they're in a given situation at that point in time. And people don't always see the best out of that situation. No matter how bad that situation is, there is always something to learn from it. Going through this whole thing with my mom developing emphysema, I'd had asthma. I'd been wrongly or rightly diagnosed with asthma in London when I was like, this is 2001, I think it was. Like, so we were about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into my stay in London, and I have this asthmatic experience, this episode, this attack, and then I got my friend who was a doctor. I got her to come around, and they gave me an asthma pump, and it sorted it out. And then I went to a doctor and got the diagnosis. And then, looking back at how I've used the theta healing technique to help me overcome that issue with asthma, I don't suffer from those problems anymore. But it's a genetic link that I had with my mom. Emphysema is a degenerative lung disease, and at the time that my mom eventually passed, I think she must have had about 18 or 19% lung capacity left. Which is not a lot.
Yeah.
And everything that I'd been through from childhood, like, man, I was a DJ at one stage, so I used to do outside broadcasts and play for parties or discos or weddings or whatever, and to being on the telephone counseling service, to doing youth work and stuff like that. All of that helped me get to the point where I've gone through every experience and said, what can I learn out of that experience? No matter how angry I get, no matter how disappointed I get, because sometimes you have expectations of something, I've always gotten to the point where, what can I learn out of this thing? And then years later, it's come back and it's gone, yeah, oh, fantastic. I remember I learned that at that stage, and now I can finally put this to practice and I can use it. And it's gotten me to the point where I am today, where, my security has helped me run events. The youth counseling and working on the telephone lines, that's helped me to work with clients.
Mm-hmm.
Working with my mom, that's helped me to learn and to understand how people struggle with debilitating diseases, and to be patient, or to do things in a different way, because sometimes you don't really understand, like somebody who's sitting in a wheelchair, you don't really understand what it feels like to be in a wheelchair because you're not there.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to take a bit of a different approach. And all of these experiences, I tell you, man, wow, they've been phenomenal. And they've put me in the place where I am today. And I thank Vienna for the system that she's created, because it's a fantastic technology, or it's a fantastic method that you can use to overcome so much, if you want to, you know. But it's, oh man, I can tell you stories like, from when I did my basic practitioners, and the experience that I had there, to some of the other things that I've experienced with ThetaHealing. And it's been an absolutely incredible journey. It's a bit of a challenge right now with Russia and Ukraine, but it's still it's a thing that brings me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah. How is that affecting you these days? What's happening with these governments and wars?
Well, we sit in a position where we are teaching people how to become better versions of themselves. But Vienna always says that we have to pay. These are the two things she always says in the basic instructors class. She says, you've got to pay your taxes, and you've got to follow the laws of your country.
Yeah.
And she says it. She always repeats it to people. And it's true. You have to do that. And we sit in a position now where, my wife's family comes from Ukraine. My wife was born in Ukraine. So was her mother. And we've got family in Ukraine. And we can't really say anything for or against either country, because if we do, we upset somebody else, so we have to be very careful with what we say. And it's difficult because in the last 2 years, with my mom's illness, it's put an incredible amount of pressure on her, because she worries so much. When the special military operation, as the Russians call it, when that started, my mom was like petrified. She's like, oh man, there's going to be nukes going off. And I'm like, Mom, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Don't worry. It's not going to happen. But my mom was getting to that point, when you go from a child to a teenager to an adult to a very old person, you go back to becoming a child again. So things don't always, they're not always as they seem to somebody who's like at the latest stages of their life. And my mom was worried. She was really, really worried. And it caused a lot of stress for her. And in a sense, I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because I love working out here. I love helping people get through various issues, whether it be relationships, which is a passion of mine, or whether it's be finding a new job, or whether it's, be something to do with their health, or whatever it is. Using the ThetaHealing technique just is such a powerful tool, if it's used in the right way, that it can provide fantastic results. And that's what I like seeing. I'm not the kind of guy that goes out and says, yeah, okay, you got to come back to me for 600 sessions. Like 600 sessions is just wasting your money. When I can teach you how to use the tool properly, that's what brings me joy. I remember, funny story, I remember when I was doing youth work in South Africa, I had this kid called Frank. And Frank came to me the one day and said to me, Craig, I'm so mad. So mad. I said, what's wrong, Frank? He's like, my best friend is sleeping with my girlfriend. I'm like, whoa, okay. So what do you want to do about it? I want to go and beat the living daylights out of him. I'm like, eesh. Okay, Frank, hang on a second. Let's just look at this for a second. I said, what happens if you go to school tomorrow and you meet the other guy and you have a fight with him and you end up both breaking each other's noses, or there's some blood that goes or whatever? What's going to happen? He's like, no, well, we're going to probably get into trouble with the principal. I'm like, yes. And what else is going to happen? Well, we'll probably get kicked out of school for a while. I'm like, yes. And what else is going to happen? Well, I don't know if we're going to get expelled and that's going to send us on a dark. I'm like, exactly. I said, Frank, if you want to have a fight with a guy, I've done my kickboxing, I've done my martial arts. I'll arrange a ring for you. I'll get you guys a set of gloves. I'll ref the fight for you. Let's get you into a ring and you guys can fight it out, but not at school. And he's like, huh. And about 3 days later, I went to go and visit their family again. And he comes up and he says, I think you're going to be really proud of me today. I said, why is that? He's like, well, that other guy who's sleeping with my girlfriend came up to me and said something to me today. And I got mad. And for a split second, I wanted to reach out and give him a touch of love. I said, uh-huh. And did you? He's like, no, because I thought about what you had said to me and I thought, yeah, you're making sense. That's the right decision to make. Do not hit this guy. It's not worth it. And when he said that, that what drives satisfaction in me is like, I give somebody else the tools to make the right decision. And they make the right decision. And they get a beautiful end result out of that. And that's what drives me with ThetaHealing as well, is, you know, I can equip these people to learn how to do various things, to learn how to work with the subconscious, to learn how to get over trauma, to get through relationship issues, to get through health issues. And they don't have to come back to me time and time again, because then, you know, that makes them reliant on you. And I don't want them to be reliant on me. I want them to be able to help themselves. And that, to me, man, that is one of the biggest joys that I get out of ThetaHealing.
Absolutely. When you get that opportunity to empower somebody's consciousness where they can reclaim their free agency, their free will, you know, if that's from their subconscious that's causing a challenge or emotion or illness, or you know, they're just in these struggles, like, to empower people is so fulfilling. It really is. And to be able to empower them to be able to help themselves instead of do the work for them as well. You know, that's the gift of being a teacher. That really is.
But it's, I can tell you, it's a big challenge, because I don't know what it's like in other countries, but specifically here in Russia, and what I found in some stages in South Africa and also in the UK, people come to you and because you've got the title of Theta Healer or Theta Healing Instructor, and they see the word healer there, they think that you are going to be the person that does all the work. You know, you're going to wave that magic wand in, and it's going to be instantaneous. But they're not prepared to do the work themselves, and it's a struggle sometimes to get that point across to them and say, listen, guys, you know, girls, guys, you've got to do the work, not me. You've got to get to the point where you understand what's happening and understand why it's happening and understand how it's impacting your life. And then you've got to make the decision. You either keep it or you give up. You know, and that's always been a constant struggle for me when I'm teaching, because some people get it, some people really get it, but other people takes them longer to get it. And that's always been where I'm teaching here in Russia. You know, that's always been a big focus for me, is I don't want to go out there and create people that are dependent on me. I want to get them to that point where they understand what it's all about and that they can make the choices. And then they go, yeah, okay, so I am in control of my destiny, not you as the teacher or you as the Theta Healer. I'm in control of my destiny.
Yeah.
You know, and that for me is, it's always been a huge, huge satisfaction level. You know, when I get to that point and I see somebody and they get those results, like I had a student, and on the second day of basic, I think it was, she'd already realized what her issues were in relationships, and she'd already found a new guy to be with. It was like, wow, that was quick. Well, no, it wasn't quick. She was at that point where she was ready to make those changes. She was ready. Just that little thing that we did in the class,
yeah,
that got it to that point. I was like, yes, fantastic. Another positive result. Happy days.
Yeah. To find that timing of getting people ready for the change. You know, I remember hearing a teacher, not a Theta healer, actually. She said, nothing's instantaneous. that, everything builds to that moment of the instantaneous change. And it was always kind of a thing of like, well, no, there's instantaneous miracle, right? There is actually something, but like I hear what she was pointing at. She's actually a Kabbalah teacher, who was lecturing on wanting to help people actually be more responsible in doing the work, like really be committed to the time of growth that is not so miraculous. We always face these like layers that we shed away, and you can have a session that is that miracle change. And there was probably one or two sessions leading up to that may have like needed some unpacking of some belief work and like doing some work. Or after the change, how do you then grow with it? So that's where in my practice I really want to hold that space for people to know that miracles can happen at any moment. And then there's how we integrate the miracle after there. And there is really building the tools to be able to get to those places of these undescribable moments, when the illness disappears, when the manifestation happens.
I strongly believe that we are here to act as facilitators. We facilitate that process, and I'll never forget this. This was one of my first ever sessions that I did with a client. I'd gone and done my basic and my advanced practitioners in Thailand. I'd experienced some crazy stuff out there, which is fantastic. It blew my mind, and it got me really hooked on ThetaHealing. Mm-hmm. And then I went and did my basic and advanced instructors in India with Lionel and Guy. And then I came back to South Africa. My first client, I'm sitting with a woman who's 43 years old, who's just had her second or third kid, I can't remember. She's just gotten divorced from her third husband. She's moved from Johannesburg down to Cape Town. And I'm sitting there, and at that stage, when this was like 2013, at that stage, we didn't have the Dig Deeper class. So we weren't taught how to do the Dig Deeper work. But because I've done so much facilitation in terms of youth work and counseling on the phone and, sports clubs and stuff like that, I knew the kind of questions to ask, or at least I thought I knew which questions to ask. And I did this first session, go through it, 1 hour, no result. And I'm thinking to myself, hang on a second. Why have I not found the trigger point? Why haven't I got down to this bottom belief? I was like, am I failing in what I'm supposed to be doing? I was like, and it really started working in the back of my mind. It was like, well, hang on, you've just done basic and advanced practitioners. You've just done basic and advanced instructors. You should theoretically know what you're doing. I was like, okay. So I went back to my notes. Okay. And then I went and she'd arranged a second session about 3 or 4 days later. And then I went to the second session. And 15 minutes into the second session, now, the history was that at the age of about 4 years old, her mom and dad divorced. And her mom moved away to Australia, and she was left with her dad. And from that point, she resented men. Like, she resented her dad. She resented every single other man, because she thought that she'd been forced to live with her father instead of living with her mother. And that's why she got divorced, because she'd get into this relationship, but that background resentment towards men was so strong that she couldn't live with that guy, and she broke up. The next one, up to the third one. And 15 minutes into that second session, I said to her, so if you had the opportunity at the age of 4 to decide who you would live with, your mother or your father, who would you have chosen? Bang! And this huge floodgate of tears came up. And she cried. She was like so emotional. I was like, wow, okay, what have I done now? Mm-hmm. And it was, she needed that first session that we'd gone through to start processing some of the information.
Yeah.
And when we got into that second session, it wasn't me that switched on the button or pushed the right button, push the red button for go. Or I'd been a facilitator, and I'd asked the right question at the right time because she was ready to get rid of that stuff. 40 years of resentment towards men was gone like that in an instant because she understood she would still have chosen to live with her father and not with her mother. I was like, wow, this is so powerful. And this is what, whenever I teach, this is what I try and get across to students, is that it's not my timing, it's your timing, you as the client. It's when you are ready for these things to happen. And, instantaneous miracles might not happen instantaneously for the person that's going through it. But you as the observer come across that person, say something to that person, and boom, something happens. And you see it as an instantaneous miracle. But it has been that progression. You might have had that lead up. And it's one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had within theta healing, is to understand that concept that you're going to say the right thing at the right time. No matter how bad you feel about not getting to that bottom level belief or not getting to that trigger, you're there to facilitate it, and if you not the person to get to that bottom level belief, just that's okay. You've just been part of the process. Somebody else is maybe going to be that person, and fantastic, happy days.
That reminds me, I had a client. I was running late for work that day. Actually, I get in the elevator and this woman steps in, and I was like, I have a feeling this is going to be my client. We ride up the elevator together. We walk in the door, and I introduce myself, and she's like, "Oh, you're Eric. Okay." And I invite her back, and we go in the office, and first thing she asks is, "Can you close the blinds?" And it's not even that sunny of a day. I was like, "Okay," and it's like a summer hot day in New York, and she's like decked out, fully covered her skin. She's like, "Yeah, you know how bad the sun is for you." It's like, okay, close the blinds. And she sits down and she starts telling me her story, and I'm just sitting there, and she's telling me, I went down to John of God, and John of God is my healer, and she was telling me how she's a naturopathic medical doctor, and her whole history of being this medical doctor, and how she actually treated herself and toxified her liver, and it was from a medication she gave herself for her liver that caused her to have pulmonary fibrosis, right? Which is where the liver, instead of producing an enzyme, produces this fibrin that starts to collect in the pulmonary artery and starts to suffocate you, right? That's what pulmonary fibrosis is. And there's no treatment for it. And you just slowly over time suffocate to death. Very, very painfully. And so she was looking for ways of healing, and she was working with John of God, and she heard about theta healing, and she's telling me her whole story. And she's like, I looked up Vienna, and I think, people like John of God and Vienna, they're connected to God, not like people like you and me, and she says this to me as I'm sitting in front of her, and she's like, and she's just going on and on and on. And I can't even get a word in. And I finally interrupt her and I say, "Did you come for the session because you missed the cancellation?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." She's like, I was like, "Look, I hear you want support in getting back to John of God, who you feel is going to be the one to heal you. I don't have to be your healer. I can support you in your manifestation. We don't even have to work on your health issue." I was like, "But if you want, you can leave right now. I won't even charge you for the session. Like, I'm here to be of support and to be of service, however you want service." And it just softened her in a way to give her permission to go, "Okay, let's do some work." And she sat down and changed her mentality. And it's like, when we're working with people, sometimes it's in process, but sometimes it's in the relationship, in the dynamic. And when she opened up to receiving the work, we ended up getting an incredible healing. You know, we got to a lot of places of liver issues, you know, resentment, anger, a lot of
Yeah.
frustration with herself, to work that through. Um, and she leaves the session. She's gone for 3 months. She comes back. She's like, you know what? I had the greatest clearing. Actually, my fibrosis levels went down. It was even better than other places. And we did another session, and, you know, she had a full remission. It fully cleared up. But when we're talking with people and we're engaging with them, we always think we're just engaging with the person. You know, when she came and sat down, who was I talking to? I wasn't talking to the person. I was talking to her liver. You know, it was her liver speaking. So these personalities, these attitudes are like from actual tissues that are living and conscious. And we forget this sometimes, and then we get reactive towards people with what's happening. And, you know, I think something that's so beautiful is that you have this background and this diversity, that you grew up having to really be courageous in finding your way of all the freedoms, but also all of the challenges that were happening in South Africa at that time. You know, I remember I visited South Africa in 95, just after the apartheid, and it was a beautiful moment of change, but I studied and heard about some of the challenges before that. So to grow up there with that, like, I really feel from you that you've learned these incredible virtues of tolerance and courage to be able to, you know, take steps when steps were scary and they're threatening, that led you through so many things that brought you to this place. And to be able to have this place where you have created this beautiful business and practice with your wife, to host all of these seminars, to bring healing to incredible people. And, you know, coming from the US, it's amazing how we're so instinctively programmed with needing a nemesis, needing a rival, and we get fed so much fear on news and things like that. You know what was flooded on the news when I went to South Africa in 95?
South Africa's a dangerous place.
No, everything there was about the Rodney King riots in LA.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Okay, I remember.
And them talking about all of the, you know, on the news there was all about all of the racism and violence in the US, you know. But when I was in the US about to travel as a freshman in high school to South Africa, it was like, oh, it's so dangerous there. All this part, you know, the whole world can be dangerous. You know, it's like we're fed all this about Russia and Ukraine, and it's like everybody is so beautiful, and really, for the most part, humans are incredible.
They're amazing.
Humans are incredible. That, you know, we just get fed so much that triggers up our genetic beliefs. And this is the big thing that, you know, we get to do as theta healers, is help people free themselves up from these limiting programs that create such survival instincts of fear, and to embrace courage, to open up to love, and to have tolerance, and to be courageous. Like, it's such a big thing.
Eric, my two most favorite classes are family ties and world relations.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those two. And I love them because, like I said to you earlier on, I can go back to 7 different countries in terms of my family genealogy. You know, we talking, oh, comes Australia. Oh, South Africans have a passionate hate for Australians, and they have the same, you know, vice versa, the rugby and the cricket. But Australia, South Africa, England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and Holland.
Mm.
You know, so those are 7 different countries that, when it comes to football World Cup, or soccer World Cup, or rugby World Cup, or whatever, I can pick a country,
Yeah.
and I'm bound to be somewhere in the top 4 kind of thing.
Mm.
But it is such a beautiful thing for me, and I remember my best friend in London when I met Natasha, and I said to my friend, we were sitting down one day, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and visit Russia. He's like, what? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Russia is so dangerous. They've got the KGB there. And as soon as you get out of the airport, they're going to follow you everywhere. And it's like the media pushes out this narrative, and it's not true. It really is not true. It's not as dangerous as what they say. The focus in those different countries or those different areas is totally different to what the media pushes out to. And here's this guy who's been involved in the security industry for such a long time, but his best friend is saying to him, dude, don't go to Russia. It's dangerous. You're not going to come back alive, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, man, I've been through so many more worse things than that in South Africa. I'm sure I'm going to come out okay. And
Yeah.
even Natasha, she'd gone into London and she spent 3 months in London. And I remember her saying to me, wow, Russia is such a dangerous place. I don't know if I want to go back, because she'd been watching the local news, the BBC
Yeah.
and some of the other organizations. And she's like, wow, no, man. But it's not true. And when you get that opportunity to go in and to meet the people and to understand the values and to understand, the government of a country says one thing, but the people of the country is something totally different.
Yeah.
That's when you realize how beautiful people are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it really takes having these skills to be able to work with our subconscious, to be able to tap into that, for that to actually be our experience. Um, so it is such a beautiful class, world relations and family ties. They really can be so healing, especially with our diverse backgrounds. I remember when I first took world relations, I felt like I never realized how much my cells were in war with each other.
Well, if you
Scottish,
if you look,
Irish, and Native American with
yeah,
English. And it's like, wait, those people really didn't like each other.
if you look at my history, the Irish and the English have been fighting against each other. The Scottish and the English have been fighting against each other. The
Yeah.
UK, or Great Britain at that stage, came into South Africa and went against the Boers, the farmers, which is the other part of my heritage, and they put the women and children in concentration camps.
Yeah.
The half of the population in South Africa were against the Germans during World War II. The other half of the population were for the Germans. So man, I come through such a crazy mix of genetics.
Yeah.
But it's been such a blessing because it's allowed me to actually go through various situations and to relate to people and not get triggered by a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But oh man, I tell you, I've had some fantastic experiences there.
Oh, so beautiful. So
Russia is a
beautiful.
Russia is a phenomenal country to come to. You come into St. Petersburg and you look at the way that people are. There's a lot of people that speak English, yeah. And I remember Natasha saying to me, "Don't smile." I'm like, "What do you mean?" We're going down the escalator, down the lift into the metro, the underground railway. And she's like, "Don't smile." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm South African. I smile for everybody. I'm a friendly person. She's like, "Don't smile." And then only about 2 or 3 years later did I understand that the way that it works is that if you're smiling towards a woman, then the woman thinks that you're hitting on her. It's not that you're friendly. She thinks that you're actually trying to pick her up or something.
Mm.
And she's like, don't smile. And Russians generally don't smile. But when you get to know them, man, forget about it. They smile, they're friendly, they help you, they go out of your way. You know, it's absolutely phenomenal. And you
Yeah.
get that in every country. You just got to be in the right place at the right time, and you'll find the same kind of hospitality. Like I found that in Turkey, I found it in New Zealand, I found it in Japan, all over the place. If you go out with the right kind of energy, you're going to attract that same kind of energy back to you, and you're going to have a fantastic time. But if you go in there and you're going like, yeah, I'm going to have problems, and somebody says something, you react in a negative way, yeah, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
And it's very much got to do with what you push out is what you're going to get back.
Mm. So beautiful. We are Mythic Life, free thinkers, deep feelers, courageous trailblazers. We own our myth with our vibes, how we think, feel, and act. We believe that love is a given, not something earned, that spiritual is sexy, kindness is cool, and earth is sacred, that everybody has superpowers and life is too boring without magic. We own our talk, and when life gets real, we heal. We choose our path and make it epic. And truly, Craig, it has been so wonderful to hear your epic journey and this real beautiful mystic life, from the southern tips of Africa to England to traveling the world and living in Russia and holding this place of healing and growth. And I just want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your journey.
Eric, thank you very much. And I'm so happy to have been invited to come and join you on the podcast. And man, I tell you what, dude, you are doing fantastic. This is exactly the kind of thing that the world needs right now.
Well, so much love. Thank you. Thank you so much. For everybody, for more about Craig, you can visit his website. The link will be in the post below. And, if you are wanting to learn about ThetaHealing and to train, he is hosting Vienna, of course, Vienna in Russia.com. And for more on Craig at viennainrussia.com. And thank you so much once again for joining. Anybody that this is new for you as a podcast, please subscribe below. Check us out at mythiclife.com. We have our free healing circles every month, a great way to hold this space of being able to experience the theta meditation and to be guided in some journey to work on your own subconscious. That's once a month for free as well. And we just are here to be of service to the world. And thank you so much, Craig.
Click on that link below and subscribe to Eric's podcast. Fantastic stuff, Eric. Thank you very much.